Oh, goodness gracious. Boys and gals, thank you for having us on this wonderful Wednesday. I'm used to, Sal, I'm used to just a slight bit more vamping because I edited it. This is like live.
Yeah, this is happening right now.
It's
Everyone can
happening
see it.
right now. We're all here. Everybody can see us. All
Yeah,
my mistakes, you all are here for it. Oh my God.
yes.
I want to thank everybody that is joining us live for the first official episode of Mutant Academy. I'm your host, DJ Woldridge. With me is Sal. For
What up?
those that
Oh
aren't,
no.
oh shit!
Oh no.
There was a pilot episode, a sneak peek that we did. That is now Patreon exclusive. It intended to be Patreon exclusive. We put it live, showed to people. But now, if you want to hear us talk about Pride of the X-Men, that is patreon.com/only stupid answers, where you can also hear Sal and I talk about everything Spider-Man. I still get like every once in a while we'll post Spider-Verse episodes public. And
Yeah.
people are like, "Where are the rest?" And I was like, "Patreon, man. I'm telling you, it's all Patreon. It's a Patreon show." This is
Yeah.
the weird part. The weird part is that it's public, but not so with Mutant Academy. This is a live show we're going to be doing every month, the third-ish Wednesday, which
Yeah.
is the third-ish Wednesday of every month. And so before we even get started, for people that may not be familiar with you at this point, Sal, where can they find you? What are you up to? Who are you?
Oh man, hello. Well, I am Sal. I'm from a YouTube channel called Comic Pop or Comic Pop Returns. All comic pop all the time. We talk about comic books, comic book movies, and comic book culture in the industry and so forth. It's a rip roaring good time with myself and my good friends. We just hang out and chat comics all day. Doing it for almost 10 years, and hopefully, if you haven't already checked us out, you should go over there and check us out.
Listen, if you're not over there checking it out, what are you even doing? What that should be your next stop right after this. There's links in the description. Check it out.
Bingo.
But, of course, where are we starting with this? We're starting with the very first live action X-Men film, which was released in 2000, directed by Bryan Singer and written by David Hayter is the writing credit, but it's got a story by credit by Tom DeSanto and Bryan Singer. A lot of other writers worked on this script over the years, including Joss Whedon
Yes.
and Christopher McQuarrie, who you may know from Mission Impossible fame. He's doing fine.
Yeah.
I was reading that he him and this other writer decided to take, or were told that they couldn't put their names on it, and it's one of those, like, I'm sure that seemed like a good idea at the time. And then after this movie blew up, you're like, wait a second, but Christopher McQuarrie is doing fine. He's okay.
Exactly. Yeah, he didn't. It wasn't like Cheers, where he left the show too early and was forgotten forever. He's not Shelley Duvall in this situation. He'll be
Yeah,
okay.
exactly. So, the synopsis is: in a world where mutants, evolved superpowered humans, exist and are discriminated against, two groups form for an inevitable clash: the supremacist Brotherhood and the pacifist X-Men. I do not to pick nit. Pacifist is a stretch.
Generous. Yeah.
Pacifist is a bit of a stretch. They have militarized uniforms and everything and a fighter jet. But you know what? I'm pacifist, sure. All right.
Yeah.
On Rotten Tomatoes, this movie has an 82% critic score and an audience score of 83%. A rare instance of audiences and critics being roughly on the same page.
Yeah.
Faithful to the comics and filled with action, X-Men brings a crowded slate of classic Marvel characters to the screen with a talented ensemble cast and surprisingly sharp narrative focus. And
Yeah.
I will say it is a bit crowded. We'll get into that. So for those that are new to the show, which is all of you because it's a new show, we're breaking this up into segments, and the first of which is Way of X, which is where we're going to be talking about the movie. Just a quick run through, quick as we can, run through of the plot of this movie. So, of course, we start off with the now outdated 20th Century Fox logo, which I don't know if you noticed this, Sal. We linger on that X just a split second longer.
I noticed it, and then because I was as you, I was a audio commentary junkie. So if I didn't notice it when I first saw it in theaters, I definitely noticed it. And every subsequent X-Men movie from that day forward,
Yes,
they will do that. Yeah, Bryan Singer, I remember, was very proud of himself for like asking them to do that, to like stay on that X a little longer. And I think it was a nice little touch. I liked it.
yeah. Any opportunity this movie has to sneak in an X, it's gonna be there, and I
Oh
appreciate
yeah.
it. I appreciate it. And by the way, just to get this out of the way, we will probably touch on this again briefly. Elephant in the room, Bryan
The
Singer.
Bryan Singer of it all. Yeah.
Not by all accounts, it seems to not be a good human being.
No.
We are going to be talking about this on the merits of the movie itself. This is, please in no way take this as an endorsement of Bryan Singer or his work.
No.
This is an exercise in separating art from artists.
Yeah.
A little bit easier because it's not like an art tour. It's a big IP. Like, it's not like Bryan Singer's X-Men. You know what I mean?
Yeah. We're not also gonna do like apt pupil and try and talk about the usual suspects. Like, we're just gonna.
No, this is just, it's an X. We're talking about X-Men. He happens to be the guy that directs the bulk of them, and some of those are good. Some of the ones are well-made films.
Yes, exactly. No, say what you will about him as a person, but as a filmmaker, he understands story structure and narrative design.
And I got to say, this is a little jumping ahead. We're going to get to our thoughts and feelings and analysis and all that in a little bit.
Of course.
This movie held up better than I expected. I was kind of.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, I was very surprised by a lot of this movie. Surprised, and of course, having seen it probably a dozen times.
Yeah.
But not within the last 10 years. I'd say, I was surprised and reminded of a lot of things that I kind of took for granted and that I kind of want to see again in some way. Like, there's some things that work and there's some things that we've moved past, but it's still, it was a welcome surprise, this movie.
Absolutely. And I think for me, in no small part, that it was nice to watch a superhero film from back in the day where superhero films had to pretend to be real movie. They actually had to do like real movie shit and not whatever, Ant-Man, time heist, whatever.
Right. Don't make a zippy comeback and that's your entire explanation for any motivation or thing that's happening in the plot. No, we just cold drop you in the middle of Auschwitz and you're like, oh, I remember seeing this in the theater, just going like, oh.
It really is like a sign of the times type thing. Cause it's like, could you imagine any MCU movie opening on Auschwitz?
I'll give them this. I remarked on this in the theater at the time. I was like, they're speaking Polish and German.
Mm-hmm.
They're not speaking English. It was like, okay, we're in Auschwitz. I get it, but they're gonna have English accents, right?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah,
it was incredible. I remember dudes bringing girls on dates in the theater, and one of the girls actually audibly remarking to her boyfriend, like, "What is this? Like, what did you bring me to?" It was an experience, dude. I will tell you. I didn't even know this movie was coming out until I saw it on the marquee, and I was like, what?
Yeah, and it's crazy because it's just it's a really and at first I was like, because we talked about Spider-Verse on Patreon, we're talking about the animated series, and they very specifically avoid using the word Nazi. And I have my concerns about the way pop culture represents that, because I think it's very easy to just paint them as basic bad guy and then take away the specific historical content context of what made them bad. I'm listening to a podcast that Behind the Bastards where they're talking about Mangala, and when you hear like accounts from Auschwitz, you're like, oh my fucking god! like the horror and the terror. Whatever. Wait, it's an X-Men show. We don't need to get into this, but it's their fault for opening on Auschwitz.
They want us to talk about it. They created that situation in which like they are analogous to. Well, I mean, even First Class, which we will eventually get to. Doesn't shy away from that concept. They're like, oh no, we're going to talk about like experimentation on and Nazi experiments and stuff like that, and it's like, oh, okay, like we're gonna go there.
And it's just, and I think it's just tricky because a PG-13 superhero movie is not gonna be able to get into the specificity of the evil going on. And so you do run the risk of sanitizing in some way.
True.
That said, I do think this scene is really harrowing, like with the parents screaming, and it's like, oh my
incredible scene. You could, I would mistake it for like a fan film at this point, where it's like it's dark. We don't go all the way, but I actually kind of appreciated it. There's I hate to say it, in a scene that is in Auschwitz with screaming and child abduction,
Yeah.
but there's a subtlety there. And
Yeah.
like it's just there is a measured hand, let's put it that way.
Yeah. And it's a great there is no I think that's one of the things that makes Magneto so compelling is there really is no better motivating incident. Like, I was listening to a podcast where it was talking about how there was a group of Jewish freedom fighters that survived, and there was a plan to like basically they went through multiple, but there was a plan to like poison German water, and this idea of like if we just let them get away with this, people will
Right.
try and do it again. And it's one of those. It's hard to fault you for the reasoning, like
Right, like, look,
considering the
listen, I
horror
hear
went
you.
through.
Like,
Yeah,
I get you, but what if we just sent you to Fort Lauderdale and just gave you like a weekend pass?
yeah,
Would that be enough?
I don't. Paper. I don't agree, but it's hard to argue with the. Anyway, point is,
Yeah.
this is great motivation, and I don't know that I say it enough on the show, and this is a good time to say it. Fuck Nazis.
Hell yeah.
Fuck Nazis. Sorry, it looks like I'm having a little bit of camera issues. I might need to resolve that in a minute, but
Yep. The
we're gonna
internet
power
Nazis are
through.
coming to get you.
They're coming to get you. Anyway, so that's where we start. And what I like is that the movie trusts you to know that that's Magneto going on. Later, you don't.
Yes.
There's no like. There's no like flashback.
When I was a boy.
There's no. They don't. It's like you see the tattoo on his arm, and you know the powers relate to the kid's powers, and it's like, yeah, that's Magneto, and we trust you to know that, and we're moving on.
Oh yeah, no, they are. It's almost like they're banking on like 30% of the audience that's there knows exactly what this is, and they
Yeah.
are turning to their friend who they brought and going, "That's gonna be Magneto."
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
because that was, I mean, when he pulls oh, man, that like push in shot of all the mangled metal and everything, I'm like, I mean, you get it, you get it. You just do the math when you look at Ian McKellen later, and then you remember that happened there. You're like, oh, it's the same guy. Like it's
Yeah, it's the same guy.
movie. The movie trusts you, which I
Yeah.
really appreciate. And it's like, it's funny how we're like, oh, we're really clapping it on the back for being like, for having any
Mhm.
treatment of maturity with the audience.
But
that's where we are.
the world exactly. That's where we are with superhero cinema at this moment. So in our current time. So back then, and just a confidence in visual storytelling, like
Yes.
you know everything you need to know about Magneto in one scene. And I do think it could have used some of that. More characters in this movie could have used like, hey, here's everything you need to know about him in a scene.
And they do that
but
with the characters they care about. Like
the
we're gonna
three
do
characters they
Wolverine.
care about.
If Wolverine goes in an animal cage and fights people, end
Yeah.
of story. We
End
get
of
it.
story.
Like,
Yep. So flash forward to not the present, but the not too distant future.
yes.
We
Next
open
Sunday, AD.
exactly. We open on Rogue. You know, she kisses her boyfriend. He gets all veiny. For some reason, Hollywood loves making people veiny. Like, oh, you're poisoned or weak. Ooh, veins. Let's put some.
I don't know.
veins
Maybe
in
it's
there.
like a thing they could achieve. They're like, oh, I know how to do that. Like V. Neil can make that work.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think my instinct would be like, just make him look a little like eyes sunken, a little tired, like a little paler, like
Yeah,
like
I
a
could
blood
see
loss
them.
kind of a thing.
I could see them going like, oh no. Well, like when we did that, in the days of silent cinema up until like the 50s, that was to denote vampires, zombies.
Yeah.
Remember Elliot from E.T., where he looked like a terrorist until they they redubbed the line. Like
Mhm.
all he had was just pale skin and like eye bags. So I mean,
Yeah.
I can imagine him going like, he'll look like one of those like Hollywood ghosts. They'll be confused.
They'll
Forget
be
it.
confused. We got to do CG veins.
Plus CG, we got to use all that computer shit.
Oh my god, I didn't even mention the insane CG opening thing that was like very much of the time.
Spider-Man, Daredevil, X-Men, they all did
Yep.
it. They're all
Yep.
guilty.
Yep.
And they kept it going. What's hilarious is how they were like, even in like the 2005, they were all like, no, we're
Mhm.
still doing this.
Yeah, these CGI opening credits, the kids love it. Don't mess with it. Don't
Yes.
mess with a good thing. So we go to a Senate hearing with Jean Grey is talking to Senator Kelly, and this is a point. Oh no, we'll unpack this later. But just
Yeah.
remind me, Sal, that I have the question of: are mutants actually a bad metaphor for marginalized people?
I mean, the thing is about that, right? Because you have to assume that, the disaffected that they're referring to are And it's funny because like you could basically go like, oh well, they're the disaffected are the disaffected of the time that you're talking about the X-Men right now. So it's like
Yeah.
it could be a metaphor for like blacks, it could be a metaphor for gays, it could be a metaphor for trans, like it could be a metaphor for any disaffected group of people.
Yeah.
And clearly Bryan Singer had a horse in one of the in this race as far
Yeah.
as like one of those groups is concerned. So you want to talk about that. But I don't know a lot of gay people who can also like lift a car or
Yeah.
shoot lasers out of their faces. Like it's not like it's a they don't have extraordinary abilities as well. They're just
Exactly.
people.
Yeah, that's the I think that for me that is the tricky part because like as just the way how do I want to phrase this? The
Yeah.
way racists will like attribute superhuman aspects to the
Uh-huh.
marginalized groups and it's like but in this fictitious world they do
They are.
they can't shoot lasers out of the eyes.
Right,
They
like,
might have horns. And so it's just it's the same thing when fantasy stuff is like, yeah, elves are the marginalized people, but they have all these specialized abilities or like dwarves
right.
or whatever. And it's like, you're
Mm.
you're
Yeah, you
kind of
don't wanna
doing a
give
racist thing while you're trying to argue against a racist thing. Like, I don't know.
well,
It's
and
tricky.
you don't wanna give much ammunition to the opposing party. You don't wanna, like, justify it or go like, "Well, I mean, like, look, if there were people in the real world who could shoot lasers out of their heads, we may wanna get a lid on that in some way, just some kind of regulation." But then you have the part where they're human beings, and the whole mantra is that you can't license people to live, and it gets tricky because normal people, regular human beings in the real world, don't have anything going on in their biological systems that make them uh dangerous. And so it's kind of a hard argument to make when it comes to
Exactly.
that. But you know what? Like it's fun, and it's like, look, when Stan and Jack were working on this, they just thought it'd be easier to say they were born with their powers and move on.
Yeah, it was literally like, I don't want to have to come up with another goddamn origin. I can't fucking do it.
It
Don't
can't
make
always be radiation, and it's like, all right, how about radiation in the biggest way possible?
Mhm.
Which fine. I also appreciate that they were like, this is about you know maybe jealousy, like, and that I buy more, where
Yeah.
it's like, it's not that I fear and hate you, it's that I'm deeply resentful of you because how come I wasn't born special with extraordinary powers? It's like,
And
I buy
truthfully,
that.
yeah, and truthfully, not not all not all prejudice is created equal, but
That's
in a
true.
lot of stuff, in a lot of instances, it does come from it comes from a lot of different things, but especially when you get into anti-Semitism, a lot of it does come from perceived jealousy, whether the reality of the situation
Yeah.
matches whatever you're listen, man, it's X-Men, all right. I feel like we're gonna get coming. Don't make it political, don't make X-Men woke, okay? It's fucking
Right.
X-Men, man. Get off my fucking back, all right.
Yeah, look, it's a cartoon, all right? I'm sorry, folks.
It's an X-Men. They made it about fucking marginalized. And I think, and here's a better way to articulate my concern:
Yeah.
is that yes, it is about marginalized. It's the same thing when you make it about elves or fairies or whatever fantastical thing. But if you look at the X-Men, it's all white people, but Storm, except Storm, who was Halle Berry. So you know what I
Yes.
mean? Like, it's not exactly like the necessarily the this the movie is not necessarily the best at representation, even though while
Yeah.
it's talking about that. So we get into we have that Senate meeting. We get to Rogue has somehow gotten from Mississippi to Canada,
Right.
which I feel like Mexico would have been the easier bet, but
Yeah, but then we would have had to make Wolverine Mexican because we're Marvel, we are not afraid to change the,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
origins of Wolverine,
Well,
as per our Patreon episode where he's Australian.
exactly, and David Hayter, who was credited for writing the script, was very proud that he kept Wolverine Canadian because apparently they wanted to make him American.
That doesn't surprise me in the least.
Nope, not at all. So, I really like this introduction to Wolverine. I'm hard pressed to think of a better way, especially in this movie. In this way, we were introduced to Wolverine. He's in a cage match in Canada, where he's and I like that we build to the claws. We set up like
Yes.
metal, like he's using his metal bones to fuck people up.
They just play that sound, which they never do again, where
Yeah.
when he gets punched, when he uses his head, it's just you hear this clinking, which the audience eats up every single time. Give them all the Wolverine. I can't believe how how they burned through goodwill of Wolverine in this in these subsequent movies.
Yeah.
In this movie, like Wolverine was a hot property. Wolverine was already at like top echelon as a character in the comic book world. But after this movie,
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
Wolverine was the ticket. And
And I do appreciate, and we'll get into this. I've got some concerns with this that we'll get into later, but I do appreciate that they understood, like, yeah, Wolverine's our guy. Like, we're
right,
going to build the movie around Wolverine. That makes a lot of sense.
it
It's
does.
not.
It's weird. It feels a little anachronistic in its own
Mhm,
way when you think about setting. It's very similar actually to the Spider-Man animated series over on Patreon,
mhm,
where from 94, where they're like, all right, so it's this where everything happened within the span of a month.
yeah,
So meet all these 60s characters for the first time, Doc Ock and so forth, Lizard, and Venom. And we're just
yes,
smashing like the 90s into the 60s at once. And that's what we're doing here, where it's like, look, it's Cyclops and Jean Grey and Professor X and Wolverine.
hmm,
And it's
yes,
like Wolverine being there in 1964 or whatever. I don't remember which year. I'm always
yeah,
getting 64 and 62 mixed up. But like in the 60s, the mid 60s, Wolverine showing up would be very weird.
yes,
And it would change the entire nature of X-Men because it wouldn't give the X-Men the time for people to like be boosters of Angel or or Cyclops, and
yeah.
instead just really go, well, Wolverine's my favorite character. He's the coolest.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. And again, listen, this works for me because obviously I'm a big Wolverine stan.
Who isn't?
We're introduced that this is all setting up that Wolverine is connected with Rogue. Rogue has adopted some narrative elements from Jubilee and Kitty Pryde in the past, where now she is the young protege that under Wolverine. And this is again, this is some nice, like, basic movie character work
Yep.
about introducing these characters. How do they connect? What are we supposed to know about their personalities? It's stuff that we just don't seem to be good at as much anymore.
It's a masterclass. No, the movie you could teach it in a class in a like just basic narrative structure. Who is the protagonist? Where is the introduction to the character? What do we know about Rogue from these two scenes? What have we learned about Magneto from this scene? Like just how much do we know in the trimmest amount of time? It's
Yeah.
just it's something that like as an auteur or an amateur filmmaker, you're just like I should know this stuff by heart, and seeing it on display in such a it's like Star Wars or Princess Bride, where it's like this is the protagonist, this is
Mhm.
the this is the rising action, this is the falling action. Like you can sit your watch to this movie,
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
almost to its detriment, but also it's so great that they're not trying to not trying to get out of the box too far. They're like, look, we somehow, because they've been trying to make an X-Men movie forever,
Yes.
and by 2000 they're like, look, somehow by the grace of God, we made an X-Men movie. Let's not completely alienate the audience with like
Mhm.
Shi'ar and Phoenixes. Let's wait one more movie for that.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's hold on to it for just a minute. So, um, uh, th- they're now on a road trip. Immediately, like Rogue mentions, like, "Hey, why aren't you wearing a seatbelt?" And immediately they get
Boom.
wrecked. Yeah, just again, just because we've established metal bones, claws. This is where we establish healing factor. And now we start getting into the characters that this movie will kind of waste, which are characters like Sabretooth, Cyclops, Storm. Pretty much, if your name isn't Wolverine, Magneto, Professor X, and maybe Rogue, you're here.
You're
But
here.
this
Look,
isn't an ensemble movie,
we'll
all right? This is
figure
a
it out.
Wolverine movie.
Which is too bad because the strength of this movie is rested on the shoulders of the guy who made The Usual Suspects,
Mhm.
who made a great suggestion in an audio commentary years ago, and that's the only attribution I'll give him, which
Yeah.
is they need to add a category to the Academy Awards, which is best ensemble.
Ooh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Just
Yeah.
like because that is hard to pull off, and when it does, it's magic. And
Yeah.
sometimes you gotta give them that. Like you gotta,
Yeah.
I'll give you, look, Jaws deserved Best Picture. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, just I'm sorry, it was like a popcorn garbage movie as far
Mhm.
as the like Cinemaniacs were concerned.
Yeah.
But like sometimes the most popular movie in America is also the best movie in America.
Yeah.
And if you're not going to grant us like giving Avengers an Academy Award, then at least do the ensemble. But
Well,
X-Men
even stuff
should have
like
been a really good ensemble, and
yeah.
it has the illusion of a great ensemble. Like you
Yes,
said.
yeah, but it is, yeah. We'll get into that more later. So, Wolverine gets into one of a couple fights with Sabretooth. He and Rogue are saved by Cyclops and Storm.
Yep.
This is where we get introduced to the X Mansion. Wolverine wakes up in there, and we're kind of like and it is so funny that like this is why this is the I really hope MCU nails the X-Men because there's so much less heavy lifting they have to do to
Uh-huh.
explain like it's a school, but also there's a military base beneath us, and we have
Oh,
these uniform, and it's like this is great because it is X. It's not trying to. It's X-Men. Like it's like
right.
we're just doing the thing from the comics. It's just like you can feel it straining to like justify why all this stuff is here.
X2 complete is a perfect sequel, which I'm so excited to talk about later in the
Yes.
next episode. But like that line where in this movie you're just kind of like, huh, like the basketball court opens up and the jet
Yeah.
comes out and you're like, yeah, Blackbird. You're just
Yeah.
excited to see the Blackbird. In the
Yes.
next one, this dude's addressing the president and they're like, is that an effing jet? And he goes,
Yes.
we don't know, but it comes up out of the basketball court.
Yeah.
Like we like there is like no one really cares about basketball at this school, you know? Like
Yeah.
they're weaponizing these people, and I'm like, that's really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, in this,
Also
you're just
another reason I'm excited for X2 is I'm trying to catch up on Succession before the finale, and Brian Cox is so fucking good. Anyway,
he's so
uh,
good.
he's so great. But yeah, it is in like in the MCU they can just be like the Blackbird is just a former Quinjet. We
Right.
got and it's like, oh cool, fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
Xavier used his vast wealth to acquire most of the Avengers assets.
done. And you know what I mean? And you don't need to like why do they wear costumes? Because the Avengers wore it's just so it's just one of those that like don't do what you did with Spider-Man, where you feel like you need to reinvent take advantage of the fact that you exist in this universe and
Yes.
use that to just make it easier to tell basically the same story.
Yeah, it would actually be kind of cool to see them go, now's the best time for us to come out because there are no more Avengers.
Mhm.
And if we put on colorful costumes like them,
Yeah.
maybe we'll be more accepted.
We're getting ahead of we made partitions for a reason. So now
I know, you're right. Okay, pin.
I'm gonna power through.
Yes.
The X Mansion, interesting. So this is where we get introduced to like one of the 3 Kitty Prides we get in these movies.
I love the girl who plays Kitty Pryde in this. She looks great.
Yeah.
Not all the powers look great in this movie.
Yeah.
Her phasing ability in that one moment, I remember.
Oh. Let me know at home if Sal froze up on your end, or maybe if it's just me. Listen, it's our first live show like this. There were going to be some issues. Bum, bum. Yeah. This is live. Thank you, thank you. And this is our first time we're doing live on the main channel. No, it is not pre-recorded. Thank you for your patience. Sal will be right back. In fact, because I've been dealing with some camera issues, I'm going to throw to a quick hold screen and try and resolve my camera issue, and we will be right back.
Hey, I'm sorry. Oh no, I can't hear you.
Boom, there I am. No worries. It gave us an opportunity for me to try to fix the camera on my end. Hey, so anyway, we were talking about
Kitty Pryde and how
Kitty
great she looked.
Pryde. Yeah.
Yeah, her phasing powers look so great. I remember a person in the audience audibly gasped when she disappeared through the wall. I was like, yeah, I mean, it's cool. People were very excited back then about a lot of things.
Well, because again, so literally, like we had Blade before this, and I didn't realize how close in proximity Batman and Robin was to this. Like, it's only like 3 to 4 years before this movie, so it's like
Right?
our expectations were understandably low.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
it was a quantum leap in terms of superhero movie adaptations
yes.
from B&R. It's like B&R was like the movie to set the standard of like, we can never go back to this.
Yeah, exactly. And what's also interesting is that Sean Ashmore's already here as Iceman, which even though we'll get like 3 Kitty Prydes, this
Keep
kid's
that
locked
Iceman.
in. Yeah, we're going to keep that Iceman. So yeah, this is our big introduction to the school. There is a moment, so like Wolverine's been introduced to everybody. There is a moment that and there's a few of these in there where it needs to kind of like snicker at the premise, like that wants you to know that we're a little above this. Where Wolverine laughs at everybody's name, even though he and Rogue introduced themselves to each other as Rogue and Wolverine. So it's like you're already on board with the names, my guy.
I know, right? Yeah, no. I mean, he does go, what kind of name is Rogue? Like, he's a huge hypocrite. Everybody else is kind of on board for pseudonyms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're introduced. Mystique kidnaps Senator Kelly, and this starts a moment of a lot of foot stuff with Mystique. A lot of like moments where you're like, hey, did Quentin Tarantino do a pass?
That would not surprise me at all.
And listen, like, God bless Rebecca Romaine and her confidence, and because I just can't. It had to be miserable. It had to be miserable to film as Mystique.
That was one of my main things where I was like, does she have? Like, I remember as a kid thinking, and up until now being like, does she have to be naked?
Mm-hmm.
Like, isn't this kind of egregious? And I can imagine them going like, I was thinking about it as a filmmaker, and I'm like, I wonder if they were worried. I mean, like, obviously, it's like we have Rebecca Romaine, let's make her naked the entire time. Like, that'll be great. And it's like, I hear you, but I wonder if they were also like, no one will believe that she can shapeshift around her clothing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like,
we see her shapeshift clothing.
Yeah, well, and I guess that's her skin.
Yeah, but then you could just have her wear. I get it. You want to show that this is her ability, so she's shapeshifting the stuff. It's like you could establish that once, and then have her wear clothes. But I mean, whatever. Nobody asked me. I don't know.
Jennifer Lawrence will set that up for them when in her exit of this franchise, where she's like, I'm wearing a suit. The end is, I'm only making up to here.
Yeah, come on. And then if I was Rebecca Romaine, because like, can her Mystique shapeshift to look like me in this scene?
Never.
Never. We can't do it. So Magneto uses this, and I kind of love that they never once explain how Magneto's powers make this mutant making machine work. Like, nope, he just his powers make the machine make people into mutants.
Here's some lazy shit here. Is Magneto's motivation and his machine and his like his blinders to how crappy this machine is.
Yeah.
It's just like he's like, but the script says I have to do this, and so we're going to do it. And it's like, this is how you can feel the 5 or 6 writers on this script.
Yeah. His magnet powers make Senator Kelly into a goopy fish man.
And I love that he's like, that's your ability, and it's like, you killed him.
Yeah,
that's not.
You ruined his life. Back in the mansion, Rogue just kind of like wanders into Wolverine's room, and he's having night terrors because, and I actually do like that they connected, like, for a long time as a fan, Wolverine, Weapon X, but they did do a good job of connecting, like, that's experimenting on a person that connects to our themes of exploitation. It's like, it does, good job.
Absolutely.
But anyway, he's having night terrors, and he accidentally murks Rogue. And then this is our introduction to how her powers work, which is she sucks the powers from him. Everybody shows up, and I would have so many questions so quick. Like, wait, why is Rogue in this grown man's room?
You're not
Why
wearing a shirt.
he's naked. She's stabbed. What's going on right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, Storm's probably like, listen, we've got a student that can walk through walls. We've walked in on worse. All right,
Exactly.
We've walked in on worse. There's an invisible kid that you haven't seen because he's invisible. God forbid we bring a black light into this mansion. All right,
don't. Actually, we have a kid with that power. Blacklight, come in here.
Blacklight. You won't ever be on the team.
No.
So, Mystique. Good use of Mystique. There's you can feel the strain of the budget, but there's specific moments where like they exploit the powers in really fun and interesting ways. We're going to get to one of my favorites soon. Mystique pretends to be Iceman and tells Rogue to run away. Professor X uses Cerebro to find her. This is where we're introduced to Cerebro, and it feels very creepy and invasive. As an adult watching this, I'm like, this feels like too much.
Yeah, this is I guess a natural interpretation of Cerebro that I never thought about, but I'm seeing it on, and I'm like, I don't know if I like that.
Yeah, listen, Senator Kelly can't have a registration of all mutants, but I can have one machine that can just find you all, no matter where you are or what you're doing. I can find you. I know who you are. I know what you're doing. Cool. So this leads to Rogue is at a train station. This leads to a really cool fight at the train station. But this is all preamble to what might be my favorite scene in the movie, which is a bunch of cops show up. Magneto uses his abilities to turn all his guns on him. Then Professor X takes over the mind of Sabretooth.
Yeah.
And has him grab Magneto's throat. And then Magneto and Professor X have like basically a debate. And it's like, it's great. It's a great scene. It's a great scene.
It's a great scene that, like, having seen it recently, again for the first time in a while, just the scene with the guns and having the guns facing the police, and having everyone go like, "Oh, whoa, this is okay. Now let's talk." Is so it's like, well, here we are 23 years later, and it's exactly as relevant and important to talk about.
Yep. And then the part where he fires the gun, but he's holding. They are able to exploit Magneto's powers in really cool ways, and this is one of those ways.
I love. Is it drilling into that guy's head?
basically, yes.
It's awesome.
Really, it's just a good scene. It's a good scene.
It's a great scene.
While this is all going on, Mystique's still at the school. You think they'd have some way to sense like body people be able to do what she does, but basically she booby traps Cerebro. I'm glad they don't bother explaining this. The blue liquid is now the black liquid.
She's got this canister of like Ninja Turtles ooze. And it's just like it's the evil elixir. And I like, what does it do? He just, I don't know.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter because it's mutant magic anyway. It doesn't fucking matter. It's like when they try to explain like why the blue lightsaber red now, and it's like it doesn't magic. It doesn't matter. So Senator Kelly escapes using his goopy fishman powers, and it seemed to actually work. The scene where he's like popping out through the bars is like, this works. This is pretty effective. He shows up at the X Mansion. And
not before seeing Stan Lee in a movie for the first time in a while, where Stan Lee is blurry and out of focus and getting a hot dog. Back then, they were like, blink and you'll miss it. Look at Stan Lee, as opposed to giving Stan Lee a name and a character arc and
exactly a bad moment in the movie. This is we're not sure he wasn't in Blade, was he? They didn't do that in Blade.
Nah, he didn't make Blade.
so even though he's in, but that doesn't.
No, it's true.
That doesn't matter whether he
doesn't need to be in Captain Marvel either. But
he didn't make most of the characters in it, like the Wolverine Storm. Those aren't his. Come on.
No, that's true.
But I guess the real like, hey, we want to draw your attention to it. Started with Spider-Man. Like, no, we're going to make this a thing.
Yeah.
Senator Kelly is not long for this world. We established that this is not a good thing to do, to artificially mutanize a person, and he melts. He literally melts in Storm's arms. Not great for anybody.
Good scene though. Like,
It's a good scene. It's a good scene, and it's unfortunately one of the few scenes
Halle Berry
scenes,
scenes.
like I don't know if you got this impression. It really felt like they were like, okay, do an African accent, and then they're like, actually, this is awful, and then they ADR'd all her lines.
Oh, that's funny.
It just
I
feels something feels off about all her lines.
I think it's because back then I used to think Halle Berry was just not a very good actor,
Mhm,
and I think, yeah, and I got that impression from this movie and then X2 when she just wholeheartedly abandons it for Halle Berry, like just
mhm.
doesn't even try.
Yeah,
Like I appreciate the effort made. I don't know if it's any kind of accent. Like I don't, you know what I mean? Like
yeah,
what Storm sounds like. It's she. I don't know what it is, but it
yeah.
ain't whatever she's trying to do. But at least it's something. But I also appreciate that, she's Storm is played by Halle Berry because they want Halle Berry in the movie.
Yeah.
You want Halle Berry to play a character. You're making Monsters Ball. You're making a movie about something. Like, if you want her to show up and have crazy storm powers, just let her play Halle Berry.
Exactly.
Um,
Just
yeah,
let her be beautiful. She's so
right.
stunning in this movie.
She's just so beautiful.
Yeah, she's stunning. That was like it felt like that was like the note. That's pretty much the note for all these for like
For
Cyclops,
everyone.
Femke Jensen, and Halle Berry. Just be beautiful. Just be
Let's
stunning.
them be beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah,
suck it in.
yeah.
Um, yeah,
Enjoy.
no.
We're not gonna give them arcs or like really. Cyclops gets a personality, which is dick. He's a dick.
Oh my God. Cyclops set back Cyclops fandom. James Marsden's character set back people's love of Cyclops by decades,
Yeah, and
which is a shame.
yeah, it's not again. James Marsden has been excellent in many things since this movie, and it's not
Yeah.
again. He's like Halle Berry, Femke Jensen. It's like they're just not given a lot to work with, unfortunately.
No. No,
Um,
and you know what? Like he's the heavy. The reality is he has to be the straight man to the star
yeah,
who is Wolverine.
yes,
And that's all he's left to do. And it's like, and you know what? Like, it's really cool of him to do that. He's like, hi,
mhm.
I'm Cyclops, no one's favorite character in this movie.
Yeah.
And my job is to be that. Like,
Yeah, and it's tough to. It reminded me a lot of the that Bel Air, the Fresh Prince reboot that they did, which is actually surprisingly good.
mhm,
But Will, who is our main character, and that is so likable and so magnetic that
yeah.
it makes sense that they were like, well, him and Carlton are antagonistic. But
Yeah.
the problem is, it immediately makes you hate Carlton because you like Will
Right.
so much, and so it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, we like Logan, we love Logan. He's the main character. So by having Cyclops just be up his ass the entire time, it just makes you hate. It's like you got to give him something. Anyway,
Yeah. But I think that they're smart. There's that moment when later on the you're a dick line,
mhm,
which killed. And
yeah,
also, I think it makes you like Cyclops a little more because he's like, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I am.
Hey, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
You're like, oh, he's self-aware.
Yeah.
Props to you, Scott.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, at least you get it. So this
Yeah.
all leads to them. They use they have to stop Magneto. They're able to find it because even though this is the closest Jean gets to an arc. I'm
Yep.
not powerful enough to use Cerebro. Jean uses Cerebro. There you go. She's grown.
Yeah.
And we find out Magneto's at the Statue of Liberty with an unnecessary. Like they built a stealth component of. They like rebuilt part of the Statue of Liberty to hide their machine. Even though nobody's there, you could have just planted it on the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah. And then it explodes.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
explodes to expose the thing. It's like I listen. I'll give Magneto's plan this. It is better than throwing a comet at the planet.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. Although
Yeah.
that's an MCU idea now.
Yeah. That's true. That is true. So the Wolverine has this like these costumes are dumb, and Cyclops is like, would you prefer yellow spandex? And it's like, yeah, kind of actually, but that's fine.
Yeah.
Whatever. Man.
Another crowd pleaser of a line, by
Mhm.
the way. Everyone's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
woo! But you know what's funny? They're not cheering because they don't want it. They're cheering because they
They
referenced
do.
it at all.
Exactly, just because they acknowledge that it existed.
Yeah.
Wolverine sets off the metal detector at the Statue of Liberty, which is stupid
Hilarious.
because every Cyclops
Oh,
has a big
no.
metal component on his head. They all would have set off the.
Yeah, no, I know. It's fun only because he sheaths 2 of 3 claws, giving what appears to be the middle finger,
Classic.
which everyone enjoyed.
Yep. And then we just get our big classic Mutant Team A versus Mutant Team B fight. This is where we get the iconic line of what happens to Toad that's struck by lightning. Iconic, beloved line.
Yes, that's a Joss Whedon line. I remember.
I
don't disagree. I
don't doubt it. I don't doubt
well,
it.
apparently, yeah. I remember learning this years ago, and it could be myth, but by now. But back then, Joss Whedon said that was the only line from his X-Men script that made it into the movie. That apparently it was like a recurring line.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what happens to a Toad when blah, 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 blah? Like, it was something that, like, Storm and Toad had apparently some kind of, like, a back and forth previously. And so that was her way of, like, throwing it back at him.
Oh, that makes more sense than what is in the movie.
I kind of liked it because it was such a weird non sequitur. It was just like, do you know what happens to a Toad when struck? I'm like, I don't know. What is that? The same thing that happens to everything else. Okay. Also, Ray Park is playing friggin' Toad.
Yep. Ray Park.
Hot off of his Darth Maul to the point where they make a Darth Maul reference in the movie.
Yeah, because he has like a staff at one point, like he uses he
just gets it. It's like holding elevator doors open. He uses it, flips it like he's Darth Maul, and then never uses it again in the movie.
Yeah, because basically they've made Toad reptile. He's Reptile from Mortal Kombat. That's basically what Toad is in the movie. Yes, 100%.
That Toad. By the way, correlations between the previous episode over on Patreon and this is that, again, we're like, let's get Toad in here. I don't know what Hollywood's obsession is with Toad, because he's also in X-Men Evolution. Like, he is everywhere. He's a character. They're like, we like Toad, use him. And I'm like, you could use anybody else.
Yeah, I think it's that dedication to the fact that we want our evil mutants to be kind of gross, which is a weird, like, Sabretooth is basically Chewbacca. Like, for all intents and purposes, he makes the Chewbacca sound. He's Chewbacca in this. Mystique, obviously she's sexy, but she's like weird because she's
got like bumps and stuff.
So here's my favorite one-liner, Sal, in the whole movie.
Oh yeah, please.
We get to the final confrontation. Magneto traps everybody up in there, and Cyclops is like, "Storm, use your lightning." And Magneto's like, "In a copper conductor? I thought you worked at a school." And it's like, and I think it works. And that's the thing, is I don't even know that Magneto does, but like, I don't know that Professor X gets more to work with than any of the other characters. But both Magneto and Professor X are played by actors with Sir in front of their name. They're such good actors that they've been Sir'd.
They make it work. That was such a, like, such gravitas was brought to the picture by having those two actors play those characters.
Yes.
And they know it because, like, okay, you got the Auschwitz scene, and then you get the San Diego Comic-Con scene with the two of them, and just watch those two talk to each other, and you're like, yes, I am in. And then, unknown James Marsden and like relatively unknown Famke Janssen, she's hot off the heels of GoldenEye, I think.
Yeah.
But otherwise it's like, okay, and Hugh Jackman, who the hell's this? That I'm already in love with him because Wolverine.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, here's some stuff, but like, don't worry, the real actors will come soon.
Exactly, and they're fucking great. Anyway,
and they're great.
The whole point, and actually one of my favorite plot points, is it looks like the the plot is focused on Wolverine, but it's actually focused around Rogue. Magneto because he is. I do like that they make this distinction. It's like, if you really believe this shit, you would sacrifice yourself to do this, but you're letting Rogue do it. And because she's able to absorb his powers. I don't know what makes her then activate it. Maybe because the thought is that she can't control the powers once she gets them. So she immediately activates the machine. This is how she gets her white streak in her hair. That's fine. And
I love that moment, by the way, when Wolverine is like, "You're so full of shit. If you were really so righteous, it'd be you in that thing." And you can see Wolverine, you can see Magneto go, "Yeah, he's got me there."
I don't have to come back to that one. And listen, man, I don't love that, like, it feels like Sabretooth and Wolverine are meeting for the first time, but that fight on the Statue of Liberty actually holds up pretty good. It's forgot
pretty
to
fun.
mention, there's a shot, and I know why they use it a lot, because I know I've seen it used in, like, when they reference back to this movie, but there's a shot where Mystique is disguised as Wolverine, and she does a spin kick and becomes Mystique in midair, and I was like, that's better effects than most MC movies now.
Yeah, it looks better than Ant-Man 3.
That's great. Like, it blew my, like, because you're right, a lot of the effects haven't aged great. That one is like, what did you do? Because that still looks really
They
good.
probably did like a morph effect. I love like old school 80s and 90s morph effects where they just blend two different shots together. Like
Yeah.
the old morph effect, man. You know why? Because they're two in-camera effects that you put together using a camera. It will always look better than, morphing it using CG, making a 3D model of a person's head and then morphing it. No.
Yeah. The fight is cool. As a Wolverine fan, it is fun. He gets the fight Mystique. He gets the fight. This is his fucking movie.
It's his movie. He even gets to say "bub," which another crowd pleaser.
Yep, another crowd pleasing moment. He saves Rogue. Day is saved. Part of the deal was that Professor X was like, if you basically, it wasn't even if you help us. If you stick around, I'll tell you about your secret. So we get set up for the. Remember when setup for sequels like happened in the movies themselves?
Yeah,
it was part of the. Yeah, it was nice.
Part of the narrative.
Nice. Yeah,
I like that Professor X lies to him, basically, where he's like, I will give you your past. Like, I'll tell you. And then when he does, he's like, I don't know anything except that there's this like location you can go to that's far away from here. Okay,
yeah,
I'll go there.
Yeah,
that's it?
Get the fuck out of here.
Nothing.
We find out Mystique survived the encounter with Wolverine, and she's disguised as Senator Kelly, who again melted.
Yep.
And that's where we wrap it. That's how we wrap up this movie. And so this is where we roll into our next segment, which is the new mutants and how we think they handled this will be an easier segment to do in the future when it's not everybody. Like next will be like, what did we think of Nightcrawler? This one is like, okay, everybody.
Here's everybody.
It's like Pride of the X-Men. That like it's a lot of it's the plot of Pride of the X-Men, actually,
isn't it?
And I think for the most part, introducing these characters, like again, we've mentioned in the thing, the characters that come off the best and truly become the leads of the franchise moving forward are Wolverine, Professor X, and Magneto.
Yes.
And they do a great job. Specifically, Wolverine and Magneto, I think, do get the best stuff here. But I think overall they do fine. I do think they would have benefited from a little bit of that animated series writing where you're able to at least give a character like a distinct, like make Storm, gives Storm a moment where she's real and we realize the amount of power she has. Done. Give Cyclops a moment where he gets more than just, we realize he's a good leader. There's a reason, because you also have to justify not only why he's there, but why is he in charge and not Storm?
Right. The only thing we see of that is that he argues with his girlfriend / wife about taking the shot that he obviously should take.
Yes.
And her telling him to wait for no good reason whatsoever.
Yes.
And it's like, I do remember that created the illusion of leadership where he's like, I have the shot, I'm taking it. Like, and it's like, all right, cool. Like he's going for it, but it's not enough. He does embody the character in a big bad way because he's a good actor and because like he's taking whatever's there, which is very little, and turning it into something.
Yeah.
The only people that really like the material just isn't there for them are all the villains but Magneto, especially Sabretooth. There is stuff there you want. Like I like the idea that Sabretooth takes Wolverine's dog tags, implying a greater history between the two of them, but also Sabretooth is clearly unaware of Wolverine at any point.
Yeah.
So there is no history.
We've established that he has amnesia. It would have been so easy to be like, oh, you don't remember me, do you?
It would have been so fun. What a cool moment. But
and that's what you need. Like, that's the animated series shit where all you need is a line. Like, if you just have a line where Sabretooth looks at him like, oh, you don't remember me. You don't know all the things I've done to you.
Right.
And you're like, wait, what does that mean?
The audience would have lost it. And they would have fought to have Sabretooth come back in any of these.
Especially like X2. Like X2 would have been a great opportunity. Like if he's hanging out with Stryker and you're like, all right, because nothing against Tyler Mane.
He doesn't care about mutants. Like
Yeah. Nothing about Tyler Mane. I think he played Michael Myers in one of the Rob Zombies.
Yeah.
He does have the physicality for it.
He looks okay as Sabretooth. Like he needs to be imposing and bigger than Hugh Jackman, who's already 6'2".
Yes.
By the way, that's one of the like 6'2" elephants in the room that people love to address is the shortness of Wolverine. I appreciate Wolverine's short. I never missed it in these movies because these movies are just not the comic books at all. Yeah. So I had no problem with it. I was never a problem. Yeah. Everybody
loves the kid. Like the new actor for Wolverine needs to be a short king. And listen, I appreciate all my short kings out there. But I
Totally.
will say pretty much every Marvel superhero is about, if you like do the Marvel guides, they're about 6'1", and every Marvel actor is about 5'3". So if you
Yeah.
want your short king, Robert Downey Jr., Mark Ruffalo, Tom Holland,
They're
Oscar
all
Isaac.
tiny people.
Yeah, they're all. It's not. I can tell you, living out in Hollywood, not Land of the Giants out here. All right. So
No.
and so it's not. I don't know that y'all are as underrepresented as
As you
maybe as
think.
it seems.
Yeah.
But so I think for me, listen, if you got the right actor and he's on the shorter side, perfect. But if you got the right guy and he's like 6 foot, it's like, but he's the right guy. Like
He's
cast
the
the
right
right guy.
guy.
It was
End
the
of
same thing.
story.
I remember like when they were like talking about Aquaman. I'm like, well, it's important. I said this back there. It's important that he's blonde. No, it's not. Doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't matter.
It clearly doesn't matter.
It clearly doesn't matter. And let's be honest, Jason Momoa was the right call, man. So fucking let it go. It doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah. So yeah, as far as introducing the characters, I mean, like Storm was very weak sauce, unfortunately, despite it being Halle Berry, who is an Academy Award-winning actor and will be close behind. Talking about like the three leads, and she's like, and me, like she is there reminding you that she is the fourth lead, and no one else acknowledging it, which is a problem I think we could get into, but I probably would be smart not to. In which she's just like, but she will. I mean, people will drop out of these movies or drop into the background. Rogue, for example, will be very underutilized from every movie after this.
Yeah. It does a good job introducing them. I think the most egregious one from a fan perspective, you want more from Sabretooth just because of the history with Wolverine, but the most egregious one is Storm because of how vital Storm is to the X-Men and how cool a character she is.
Yes.
And how much you could do with the character. So getting into moving on over to X Factor, which is where we're kind of talking about our thoughts and feelings, which we've already gotten into a little bit, and a little bit of the behind the scenes. What's interesting for me, like going through this briefly, doing brief Google research, is how at one point James Cameron was never attached to direct, it doesn't seem, but he was attached to produce with Catherine Bigelow. To direct, and but then he transitioned over to Spider-Man, and it is interesting to me, like James Cameron's big into these comic book movies, man. Like he really wanted to make it happen.
He did want to make it happen, and having read James Cameron's Spider-Man script, I'm so glad he's not involved in any of them. He's also a tyrant and a psychopath. He also is responsible for 2 out of 3 of my favorite movies of all time. So, like, I mean, you know,
what we're saying.
He's a complicated character, is what I'm saying. You know, at no point do I want to be like him. At no point do I want to deify him, but he gets the job done. As long as that job is not about blue cats or sinking boats, then I'm on board.
Then you're on board.
Yeah.
And of course, there were drafts where like Nightcrawler and Beast were in here, and it makes sense they were but this is our first one. We're coming. We're just coming off of the only success we have to bank off of is Blade. And so it's like, hey, maybe let's hedge our bets a little bit.
Let's pare it down. We can always say they're not there today. You
know? Yeah. They're out today. There was a draft that had the Brotherhood of Mutants with Magneto, Sabretooth, Toad, Juggernaut, and Blob. Also had Henry Gyrich and Bolivar Trask.
Oh my God!
Had Sentinels, and it's like maybe I'm glad maybe we didn't do this one.
I mean, isn't that just the pilot to the animated series from the 90s? Like
that's literally animated series from the 90s combined with the Pride of the X-Men pilot. It's both at once.
That's a lot. I mean, like if you could do Night of the Sentinels as a movie, and it would be dope.
Yeah.
Not in 2000, and B, not possible back then.
Yeah, Sentinels. I mean, we didn't even get Sentinels until Days of Future Past, and even then was like one.
There was one Sentinel in the bad one in X3.
Last Stand. Last Stand.
In the Danger Room, a fake Sentinel.
And the Danger Room was not included in the specific. There was a lot. It was included in a lot of drafts, and it was cut out of this one, which I think is fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
In fact, the only thing I wish we had more character stuff. My only real complaint with this movie is I wish we'd given Storm specifically more to do. This movie I think clocks in. I think it's just under 2 hours. I think it's like, yeah, man, just like fucking like I normally don't want my movies to go over 2 hours because I think we've gotten a little too.
Hour 44.
Yeah, hour 44. Yeah, crank that to 2 hours and just give us a bit more. understand, like have Wolverine spend a little more time with the team, and from a
Yeah.
writing perspective, and this is kind of basic shit. Normally you give your lead character an arc. It's a little
Yeah.
bit different with the ensemble. A lot of the easiest way to you want your story to have an arc. It's a way to give the audience sense of change. It makes them more invested.
Mhm.
If you have an ensemble, you usually give the ensemble the arc. And the easiest one when you think about team movies is learning to become a team. And
Right.
even though that's basic, it's what they did in the first Guardians movie, all that stuff. I think
People love
there's
those movies. It's fine.
exactly, there's a lot of conversation around the idea of trust and stuff like
Yes.
that. And so I think you could, and with Wolverine learning to be a part of a team, and having the final conflict, they get a little bit in this, but I think you could have tweaked it a bit more to have it be the final conflict is us learning to work together as a team.
I mean, they already there already is the team. So all they need to do is just be like Wolverine throws the team off.
Yeah,
Wolverine sows doubt and concern into the team's dynamic.
yeah,
And then you find out Wolverine is the secret sauce that makes the team even better than they were before. Like
boom,
that's all you need to do.
yeah,
Because because they're already a team. If you want, if you want to like say, oh, Beast should have been like the keynote speaker at the Jean Grey conference, like that would have been
yeah,
cool. But that also would have implied like there's been different teams.
yeah,
But the X-Men have been around for a while. You just haven't seen them. Um, that would take 3 minutes. That gets us almost to 2 hours. Like it's not much
yeah,
to flesh out the world. That being said, they're thinking of a second movie. The other thing that's undercut with that whole message is that Wolverine leaves at the end,
mhm,
as though, and they do this in every effing superhero movie now,
yeah.
where like at the end of all I can think of was at the end of Age of Ultron, when like they're always like, well, goodbye. And I'm
Mhm.
like, what do you mean goodbye? Like you signed up for 10 of these. Like when Robert Downey Jr. is like, I gotta go, I'm leaving. Maybe I'm gonna go.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're not going anywhere. Sit
Come on, man.
down.
Well, and
Like,
it's like in Iron Man 2 where they're like, "Sorry, you're not gonna be part of the Avengers." Like, what
right.
do
I'm
you
like, what even is what? Why did you put that in the movie? Like the
Yeah,
whole point of him being here is to be on the Avengers, and you're implying he's not going to be on the Avengers.
like, was the
Is that
conversation that was gonna be are we trying to like, or what are we trying to invent drama here? Like the biggest extension of that idea is literally killing off Superman before the Justice League movie.
yes? That was like, what the hell is this? Like, uh, and it's like, but it's so and it's baffling to me. So you set up this whole thing where Wolverine is like, I'm the man without a country, and here I
Mhm.
am now with this group of people that are colorful and silly. But you know what? It works for me. Now
Yeah,
let me get on let me steal Cyclops' motorcycle and leave for me for a while. Here, take my dog tags,
yeah.
child bride. I will
Yes,
see you
yeah.
soon.
Oh, and the other thing that a little bit of that characterization would have mentioning the child bride thing, we do get a hint that Rogue has a crush on him, which makes sense within the
Fine.
context of the thing.
Yep.
But he's like, he's with Jean. He's like, tell her I have my heart belongs to somebody else. Guy, I get what it's. Hey, the comics, right? They love triangle, Cyclops, Jean Grey, Wolverine. This
Totally.
movie did not do the work to justify that.
It's the franchise didn't do enough work to justify it,
Yeah,
and they think they did, and they keep leaning on it, like the Wolverine being a whole plot point of like I loved her, and it's like she
yeah,
didn't love you back.
yeah.
Like, no, none of that works. It's horrible.
And it's because we don't ever give Jean what
What
is
does she
Jean's
do?
personality? What does she want? What is she into? Like, does she see in Wolverine? What does she see in Scott? Why do
Right.
Scott and Wolverine butt heads other than they both like Jean? Like, why?
That's it.
Just a little bit more of that. It's so I think so much of this is way more solid than I remember, and
Yeah.
so it's just that like that little extra zhuzh it up a little bit, just a little. And it's not. I get budgets and shit, but it's literally just characters in the room talking,
Yeah.
maybe a montage,
Right.
of like
That's who doesn't love a good montage?
a
And the X-Men
montage.
lend themselves so much to it. You could just go to the school,
Yeah.
show Wolverine, maybe audit the class, like maybe you know what I mean. There'd be some great moments of just like just the Army of Darkness montage where it's like put the candle
Yes.
by the explosives. Like I just
Yeah.
want to see those moments, and that it could have used that. Otherwise, very few notes for this movie.
Yeah.
Especially knowing the time. It's 23 years old.
Yeah.
It was a big deal when it came out. It really got a lot of people's attention. It arguably kicked off the superhero movie like thing.
Yeah.
It's 2 years before Spider-Man. It's 1 year after Blade, but
Yeah.
Blade did a nice job of like kind of acclimating people to comic book. This was the movie because it's like
Yeah.
you can't Blade. You can be like it's a vampire movie. Like
Mhm.
they made there's a movie called Modern Vampires that came out around that time. Dracula 2000's on the horizon. Like John Carpenter's Vampires. Vampires were big at that time. So like
Yeah.
the idea of like a Blackula, like
Yeah.
is not a foreign concept and would not be unexplored in 1999. This is an inescapably comic book movie. Wolverine, Cyclops, Professor Xavier, Magneto.
Yeah.
Like these are names that you can't escape from their origins, and it's like, and they're on display, and they're blasting crap, and there's lasers and shit. Like it's all comic books, and it's like if people get on board, then the sky's the limit, and they were, and it was. So
Yeah.
yay.
I think it's like because we, there's a lot of talk of like where did this kick off, and I think it's like as we talk about it, I think it's they were getting ready to slam the door after Batman and Robin, and Blade
Hell
was just able
yeah.
to sneak its foot in there to keep the door from shutting. And then X-Men opened the door, and then Spider-Man just ran through it. Spider-Man was
Just
like,
swung
"Boom,
right.
this is a thing now."
Yeah. It's so much so that Daredevil got away with being what it was.
Yeah,
Like Daredevil comes out and everyone's like, you know what? I guess I'll go
that's
see
true.
Daredevil.
And I think that the X-Men walked so Spider-Man could run because it even like we're not going to do like a grounded black version of Spider-Man's costume. It's going to be the costume. We're not going to have jokes about spandex. We're going to do the fucking costume. He's going to look like Spider-Man.
Yeah. It's true.
Yeah. I think, and again, like Brett Ratner at one point was another person they were talking about having direct this, and he'll come to curse this franchise later. This franchise does have a burden of directors who are not great people,
who suck, and some of them are also really bad filmmakers.
Yeah, exactly. On top of it, and some of them do well in this and X2, and then come back later to not do so great. We'll be all over the map there, but that's down the line. Now the question. Part of the reason that prompted us to do this series is that, of course, the X-Men are coming at some point eventually
someday
to the MCU, and how, if any of this, will get utilized, repurposed into the MCU. And I think you brought up an excellent point in that. I think I bums me out that it feels like they're sitting on the X-Men until post Secret Wars, because it's like, yeah, I think you would really benefit by putting an X-Men in there before you do another Avengers movie, because that the window of the X-Men not being around, or the Avengers not being around, does give the X-Men an opportunity to be like, oh, we could be that. Like that's a way to become more validated within the thing. So for you, look in the future, MCU.
Yeah.
How do you think the X-Men in the MCU is going to relate to this movie?
I think that they are going to try and learn lessons from this movie, and unfortunately, like this movie has a lot of great ideas and a lot of like good lessons that could teach the MCU a thing or two, which I don't think the MCU is interested in learning. Like, I don't think the MCU is interested in being lectured at. And seeing this movie, I don't think they're going to go, you know what? Like, this movie could teach us, like, we need to make it short, trim, tight, like character focused, and very I hesitate to use the term by the numbers, but what other way can I put it to just, in terms of structure, just a very straightforward film.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to do. I think they're not going to do that. And the only thing I think they're going to learn from it is like, let's not make it Wolverine focused. Let's shake this franchise up. Let's take X-Men, but what if it was all focused on Jean, or Storm? I could see them definitely like focusing on on a character that doesn't have a lot of great stories, or if they do, they're the biggest stories ever.
Yeah.
In an effort to try and avoid the obvious choice, which is obvious for a reason. Like don't be afraid to lean on Wolverine. If you're going to make a Wolverine movie, if you're going to make Wolverine a character in the X movies, Wolverine should be in the X-Men movies and have movies.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and I hope they do take that. That I hope they do learn. It's like, okay, we already know Wolverine is a character that can front his own Wolverine films, so he can just be a supporting character in the X-Men movie. He'll be there,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But we're not gonna because we know because like if I'm them, I'm thinking like, okay, X-Men movie series, Wolverine movie series, X-Men TV show. So
Yes.
like X-Men Generation X on Disney Plus, and then a Wolverine movie. And so Wolverine, we introduced Wolverine as part of our ensemble, but it is more of an ensemble.
Right.
What I'm worried that they'll do is they'll do what they did with Spider-Man, where it's like, okay, we need to throw out literally everything from these movies. We can't do
Yes.
no Cyclops, no Jean Grey, no Beast, no Nightcrawler, no. It needs to be all new characters.
Yeah.
We'll never do. We failed with Phoenix twice. Never again. We won't even
Right.
mention Jean Grey. She doesn't even exist in this universe.
Yeah.
Like I'm worried.
Forget me not. It's gonna be Glob. Like it's.
Yeah. I worry that they'll overcorrect in that way of like just do. Because again, I think like you and I were kind of on the same page talking about the Spider-Man movies, the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies. Tom Holland's so great, but it's like just do Spider-Man.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to be Iron Man's sidekick. He doesn't need a best friend. Zendaya can just be Mary Jane. It doesn't need to be Michelle Jones or whatever. Just do the thing, because this is our first and possibly only time we'll get a live action version of these characters able to hang out with Iron Man, Captain America, whatever. Completely. So just do the thing. Just do the thing.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
That is all I want is for them to do the thing. I know there's rumors about them throwing out like the fan rumor of the Fantastic Four actually being like a kind of period piece movie where they've been missing since the 60s. Like they're astronauts from the 60s and they're missing. And if they were to play with that idea and go, yeah, no, like we could cast an older Professor X, not like a really old Professor X, more like a Jude Law, somebody who's like 50, you know, and I'm sure he's older than 50, but like, a 55-year-old Professor X, a Professor X who can be in all the X-Men movies. And we don't have to recast, but who maybe led the team with the 05 in the 90s, you know? And so we can get away with like introducing Gambit and characters that would be more time sense, redefinitions of the team so that we can then reestablish the team. But again, like this movie is unconcerned with building a franchise outside of like making sure this movie comes the hell out. And so there's I don't know if there's a lot of blueprint for Marvel to follow because they're not in the same position. Although ironically, the argument can be made they kind of are, because they're trying to find their footing again in a time when like they've not fallen from grace, but certainly stumbled. In the eyes of their fans and in the audiences, and X-Men is a thing you can't mess up. Back in 2000, you could screw up X-Men. Hell, Fox routinely screwed up X-Men, as we will discover. They will completely fumble the bag and be given chance after chance by the audience. Who don't even bother to try and create like an explanation. Like I've seen people try to like figure out how all the Terminator movies work. And I'm like, why? Whereas X-Men go, don't worry about Wolverine origins. Like it doesn't matter. Like you can watch it, but it's fun, but it doesn't really matter. And don't worry about like that one, and don't worry about this one, or don't worry about like I just pick and choose, and nobody cares. Like, what about Deadpool? What about Deadpool? Why would the first class be there?
Exactly. He's hanging out with Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, but there's the first class there, and it's like,
right, like that Colossus isn't even close to the Colossus in the second one. Like, what?
Doesn't matter. And I kind of go back to basics. Don't be overwhelmed with. I think they could learn a lot from this movie about like if they wanted to revisit it and just do kind of like your core components, and if you were to change stuff, like really dial in, because I don't know that this franchise ever really got Cyclops. I don't know that this franchise ever really got Jean Grey. I don't know. They definitely, I feel pretty confident they never got Storm. And I think there would be merit in saying like, okay, for the X movies, Storm is the Wolverine in that she is the centerpiece that we're building around, because that character can shoulder that. Like as a kid, the two X-Men, like everybody knew are Wolverine and Storm. Like you felt pretty confident you could, if you put a picture of Wolverine and Storm in front of somebody, they would know who they are. And so
you could do a Storm show, like you could Andor Storm, where it's like Storm's a member of the team, she's important. You could do it where she's not a leader, she leaves. The show is the Morlock saga. She runs the Morlocks for a while. She comes back, she's the leader. Cyclops leaves. Cyclops gets a show now.
And that my other suggestion would be if MCU's watching this movie is like maybe don't, as tempting as it is and as much as I love good super team versus bad super team, and we haven't
Yeah.
really gotten, like, we haven't gotten Legion of Doom, we haven't gotten Masters of Evil, we haven't gotten those.
No.
So as much as I love the idea of like X-Men versus Brotherhood, it is a lot of characters to introduce.
It's true.
So
You
maybe,
could just do one.
yeah, so
Like-
maybe seriously, maybe it's like X-Men v Sentinels. And the
Right.
Sentinel technology is Stark Tech. And we just a very simple, like, in that way we're focused on introducing, because I as much as Marvel gets heat, rightfully so, for not doing a good job with villains.
Yeah.
Part of the reason of that is because they're so focused on introducing their heroes, and they do a good job, as much as like a lot, even phase 4 projects, as much as like some of them I don't hit with me. Like I really liked the first 2 to 3 episodes of Miss Marvel, and then I feel like it kind of lost the thread a little bit.
Yes.
I still like Kamala Khan a lot. You know what I mean? Like, I like actors, and so even the stuff that they don't quite nail, they do. Like, I like this character, I like this actor or actress, I'd like to see more of them. So like that instinct might not be so bad with X-Men, and that's like, yeah, let's just focus on introducing our team, and give them one bad guy to fight,
right?
And then in following movies or shows, we can introduce, unless you rely on the Disney Plus show to like, here's all your factions or whatever. Like,
I mean, you could also introduce other factions that are less important, like the Hellfire Academy or the Hellfire Club, where it's like, really, we're really focused on Emma, but also here's Sebastian Shaw et al. You know, it's like, who cares about the rest of them? They're very much they're gimmick characters. We get Paul Giamatti to play one of them. You know, it's just like, it's just obvious stuff where we're really focusing on
Mastermind would be good. That would be
like, you know, it's just something kind of fun with that. But you know, or Mystique is the villain, because Mystique is just that formidable and scary. You know.
I mean, she was in X-Men Evolution. She was kind of like the big bad before Magneto. Like it's there.
She was the temple girl.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah. So I think there's stuff there, and I think Marvel would benefit across the board by going back and like focusing on making their movies feel like movies, and
whole movies.
Yeah. Like that's something that feels almost kind of quaint about this. It's like, oh yeah, remember when we had to like still make like X-Men, but make it a movie as opposed to just here it is.
Here's the next installment, and we'll get it right the next time. Like,
don't worry, we'll get it right. We'll get there. You know,
and that kind of approach.
They did get it right. Sometimes they did get it right.
They did, exactly.
Oh my goodness! So that's what we're hoping to see in the MCU. The final segment is Generation X, where we rank them.
There's only one.
We could put it against our pilot, our secret pilot, which was Pride of the X-Men, and I think for me this is easily above that, because it's the same idea, but it gets a whole hour's worth more of time to explore it.
Yeah, Wolverine in this movie beats Australian Wolverine by a country mile. The kitty from this one is better than the whiny brat in the cartoon. I have a real soft spot for the animation on Pride of the X-Men, because it is basically just like the best pilot episode of G.I. Joe. It looks so good. And it is the impetus behind the X-Men arcade game, which is awesome. But nah, this movie beats it.
100%. I'll be interested to see how this, especially since it's been so long since I originally saw it, how it will compare to other movies that I remember more fondly moving forward. But so this is it. This is the show. The next month we'll be talking about X2. We're just going to keep going through the Fox movies in order, and some of them will be good, like this one, and others will be like really not good.
Yes,
real not good. I'm wondering if the low point will be, because I have not revisited this movie since I saw them in theaters. Will it be Last Stand or Wolverine Origins? Which will be the real? Obviously, people, detractors on Apocalypse, detractors on New Mutants, Dark Phoenix, but one of those two has to be like the low point.
Yeah, they're pretty bad. So it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be really hard. That's gonna be real Sophie's choice, because it's like
we get them back to back too. Ooh,
yeah. No, that'll be fun at least to compare, because I remember being like, oh, it's over.
Yeah. Well, whoops, we tried hard, and then it came back, and you're like, oh, maybe.
And then nah.
Oh, no. So there we go. I want to thank everybody that joined us live. There's so many of you. I really appreciate y'all chatting with each other in the chat. Maybe next time we get some of those super chats in there, and I'll put you up on the screen. How about it? How about it? So yeah, next third Wednesday, we'll be back here for X2. If you want to hear me and Sal talk about Spider-Man, we do that over on the Patreon. Sal, where can they check out your stuff?
Go to youtube.com/comicpop or /comicpop returns, and you will find everything we do for the most part.
Hell yeah, go check that out. You can find me at DJ Talks Trash. You can follow the show at Only Stupid Answers. Every week we put out a new podcast episode. Be sure to check those out. We really appreciate it. And we will see you all next time. Bye, everybody.